All right, well, we're still expecting quite a few more people to join us, but we'll just get started. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Rebecca Prince-Ruiz, and I'm the Executive Director here at the Plastic Free Foundation. And I'd just like to start by acknowledging that I am speaking on Whadjuk Noongar Budja in Fremantle in Western Australia, and acknowledge the traditional owners of this land on which I'm talking to you from today, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So thanks very much everyone for joining us this morning, or this afternoon, or this evening. We've got people from a few different countries joining us on the webinar this morning. See a couple of comments in the chat there. Would love for everyone just to pop in your name, where you're from, what organisation you're from, if you're from an organisation, and at the end of the sharing of what we're doing for Plastic Free July this year, and a little bit more about how we work and the behaviour change principles, there'll be plenty of opportunity to hear from you the challenges that you're trying to tackle in terms of the plastic waste issue and your plans for Plastic Free July, because this problem, as we all know, of plastic waste and pollution is so much bigger than any one person or organisation. And we really believe that the more that we work together and support each other and align our efforts, the more difference that we're going to make. So for those of you who aren't too familiar with Plastic Free July, I'm just going to share a little bit about how we work, what our theory of change is, and how and a bit about the communications and the tools that we've been developing for Plastic Free July this year that we hope helps you. So as you'll know from the invitation that you received for this website, our theme this year is Turn the Tide, one choice at a time. And that theme came from a piece of work that we did earlier this year, in which we released a survey where we surveyed people in over 20,000 people in 28 countries around the world on their attitudes to actions to combat plastic pollution. And we released a report called Rising Tides, and it has ahead of the United Nations Environment Assembly and the where the global treaty was discussed. And obviously there has been an incredible momentum and building on awareness of the plastic pollution issue over the last decade. And it is great that we now have a commitment, unanimous commitment from UN member states to this global treaty to end plastic pollution, and so much interest. At the same time, we have increasing production of plastics, and the challenge has never been greater. So to really make change on this issue, yes, it needs to happen at a global level, but it also needs to happen at a national level, a local level, a community level, and an individual level. And so with Plastic Free July at our heart, it's a behaviour change campaign. And so starting with that individual choice, that one choice at a time, and that giving people this sense of the things that we each can do actually matters. So Plastic Free July is run now by the not-for-profit, or the for-purpose as we prefer to call it, Plastic Free Foundation. And what gets us out of bed every day and what we want to do is to help end plastic waste. And so our mission statement is that we're a global not-for-profit social movement that stops around 300 million kilos of plastic polluting the world each year. We share plastic-free solutions with people and organisations so we can all take action to end plastic waste and enjoy a healthy world. And we're really expanding our definition of the plastic waste and pollution problem to include those human health impacts as well as the impacts on communities and everyone that is affected by this issue along the whole plastics value chain. So our audience is a very diverse audience, and it is a global audience. From the surveys that we had done last year by Ipsos that included those policy questions, we know we've got a sense now of where people are participating from. So the figures in that global survey were quite extraordinary. So 29% of global consumers were aware of Plastic-Free July, and of those 46% were participating though. So whilst we started in here in Australia, it's now significantly bigger internationally. And I think of those 26 countries, Australia was 16th in the world in terms of participation. So our biggest audiences are actually now in India, China, the US, and Latin America, and Australia is number 16. So it is a very global movement, but there's something in it for everyone. And I think that's a lot of what appeals to not just individuals, but increasingly businesses and corporates and governments that get involved in Plastic-Free July. And I think it's also worth noting, and I know there's a number of people on this call who have been part of spreading this, well, the entire movement against plastic waste and participating and amplifying Plastic-Free July. So whilst we're with our comms, with our social media and with our website, etc., we're really focusing on the beginners. We call them Pete and Marianne, our target audience of mainstream everyday people, supporting and encouraging them to end plastic waste. We're also aware there's so many organisations, community groups, other not-for-profits. I see people from the university sector here and other organisations that are taking Plastic-Free July as a challenge to engage their staff or tackle plastics in their operations and supply chain. So we've got the beginners, we've got the amplifiers, and that's kind of the descriptive of, I guess, what we'd call many of the people who would be joining these webinars, and then the collaborators. So when we're partnering with, we also have a program for local governments. We work with corporates and also state and national governments and support their actions. So, but with the Plastic-Free July Challenge and what I share with you now, it's really, we're kind of focusing on how do we support people to make change in their own lives. And so our theory of change is that through empowering individuals, giving them ideas, solutions, what they can do in their own lives, so one choice at a time, what we have seen is people then take it into their communities, sharing positive stories of solution, sharing stories of impact. And from that, we get this systemic change, and businesses and government are changing procurement practices, supply chains, and legislation that's actually driven by this groundswell of community engagement. And that's what we see time and time again with things like when governments are introducing plastic bag bans. It really has been because there has been this groundswell of community change, groups setting up boomerang bags or bag swaps, petitioning for change. We see local independent stores getting rid of bags, often councils or counties banning the bag, and then supermarkets taking action, and finally we're seeing the legislation change. So if you haven't already visited our website, and I'll go through this in a little bit more detail just online shortly, the Plastic-Free July website is really our toolbox of resources where we have ideas and solutions, stories of what other people are doing, and then resources to help people amplify their effort and share it with others. We've done a lot of research with our participant as well as the general public. We work very closely with a behavioural economist in terms of designing our messaging, as well as an evaluation framework. And what we know is that people care and that people are concerned about the plastics pollution issue. They're not okay with seeing plastics in our environment, seeing the harm that it does for our wildlife. And what they want to know is what can they do about it. And they also want to know stories about what other people like them are doing. So that's what we share on our website. As I said, there's lots of tools and resources there. We're starting to translate these more and more into other languages, as well as other organisations are taking our resources and translating them as well. And through the campaign, and this is really how Plastic Free July started back in 2011, when there wasn't the same level of conversation in the community about this issue that there is today. It was just really sharing ideas of what to do, how to remember your own bag, putting together a reusable kit. People then start to discover all the other plastics in their lives after they've tackled the bag and the water bottle and the straw and the coffee cup, and realise, oh, there's soaps in a plastic bottle, or it's hard to shop at a supermarket. So they switch to independent stores or going to a farmer's market, and then sharing it in their communities, having a plastic-free morning tea or a workshop, and then taking it into their schools and workplaces. And so it really has spread to become this global social movement from efforts of people around the world, from schools in India to workplaces in London, to small businesses, to islands in the Caribbean who have an annual, they call it the Plastic Free July Cavalcade, in the island of St Kitts in the Caribbean, and they've had a big issue there with plastic waste on their beaches and impacting tourism. So they really use this month as an opportunity to educate not only their residents, but also engage businesses and the whole tourism industry in change. And one of the things that we would love to unpack more today, I guess, and develop relationships with people like you that are participating today, is the more that we hear those stories and share those stories of either what you're doing or people and businesses in your communities are doing, is that really inspires others. And I'll talk to you a little bit more in a moment about our coffee cup initiative we're going to focus on this year. But here's an example of a photo of a local cafe that I took several years ago, and they had what they called a mug library. So they got together a basket of donated cups. Now with COVID, they actually don't keep the basket of cups on the counter. They put it behind the counter now. So if people don't want to dine in, or they forget their BYO cup, they can borrow one of these cups and then bring it back the next time. And when I shared this photo on our social media several years ago of Kate and this idea of a basket of cups, the response was really overwhelming, as people all around the world tagged their local cafe and said, hey, this is a great idea, could you do it too? And actually I've got a bunch of mugs that I'm happy to donate. And it got reposted by the actor Melissa Joan Hart from Sabrina the Teenage Witch and a number of other programs, and it ended up in Australia, at least in national media, how this story of this cafe and this one really simple change went viral. So the more we love to hear the stories of what people are doing to make a difference, because it is hard and the problem can seem overwhelming, but people love to be involved, and we would love to hear your stories and share them as much as we can. And we'll be sharing stories of councils. This is a council that introduced a reuse scheme for an event. They had about 20,000 people take part. They engaged a reuse scheme that provided all of the reusables for about 35 food and beverage vendors at this event, and they went single-use free of not just single-use plastics, but any other form of single-use packaging. We're seeing corporates getting involved, changing their infrastructure, promoting it to their employees, and looking at their supply chains. And the impacts of those small changes really do add up. And I'm going to talk a little bit more in a moment about our monitoring and our evaluation, and just why signing up is really important. So from our research, we know that last year 140 million people worldwide took part. People signed up from 190 different countries, and along with that estimate that I gave you before of the 300 million kilograms of plastic waste that were avoided, we also know that when people are tackling their plastic waste, there's actually a flow-on effect of avoiding and reducing their overall waste, their food waste, for example. So instead of, you go to the store, you need 1 avocado for a recipe, but it's cheaper to buy 4 avocados on a plastic tray with plastic wrap, because it's such a bargain. But then you only ended up needing that 1 avocado, and the others could go to waste. So what we find with Plastic Free July is we share ideas to reduce single-use plastic, or we'll share tips on how to make a soup from your leftover veggies. People tend to reduce their food waste and other waste. And so through our research and evaluation tool, we know that overall 2.1 million tonnes of waste were avoided. So this isn't waste that was diverted from a general waste or a landfill bin into recycling. This is actually waste that wasn't created or used in the first place. So this is from people refusing, reducing, rethinking, and repairing, etc. We also know this is a really critical part of our work, is in supporting action like the Global Treaty and National Plastics Plan. Is we have 91% of the general population, not just our participants, supporting action to reduce plastic waste by consumers, producers, and retailers and government. We also know, and this is interesting feedback we get from a lot of people, and we have statistics on this through our research, is that participants have an increased sense of a positive sense of well-being, which increases in participation and actually has maintained resilient even during the pandemic. And we think that's because it gives people an opportunity, instead of being overwhelmed by the problem, actually feeling good about, well, this is something that I can do. People often report back that they're feeling healthier as they've stopped eating so much packaged and processed food. They're cooking from scratch. They might be shopping at more independent stores or going to their farmers market and feeling a bit more connected with their community as well. And before I just share those links with you and show you a bit more about our evaluation, we are seeing through this work that we did for the UN treaty, through our impact report and the work we're now doing with government, working on single-use plastics ban, is that this groundswell of actioning is influencing corporate behaviour and regulation and government legislation as well. So I'm just gonna just quickly go through a few things on our website, and then would love to get this a bit more interactive and hear from you all about what you're doing and what your plans are. So just to run you, I guess, quickly through the website, and we will be sending you through a link in the next couple of days. What we've created for this year is a change maker toolkit. So rather than you having to navigate through the website yourself across all of the different resources and assets, we just got that in one handy place. So in our on our website, you'll see along here we've got ideas of how to get involved, of what people can actually do. So how they can tackle single-use plastics, common single-use plastics, for takeaway items in the bathroom, for celebrations, shopping at bulk food stores, all the different areas of people's homes and their lives. We also have a great event map in there that we promote a lot. So we would love if you're doing any events in your area, and we're constantly sharing that through our socials and our newsletters. You can start to see that slowly. People around the world are adding their events. It's very simple, the level of information. All you just need to add is the name of your event, the time in your local time, the date, and a link, so that anyone that wants to know more, they go directly to your site. So you can just you just need to fill out this form here, add your event, and we'll just approve that. So that only takes a couple of minutes. As I said, the other thing that we know that people want is they want stories of what others like them are doing. So how a council is using recycled banners to engage their local community and make refurbished bags as part of their classes to teach sewing skills, how a family got involved, what a school did to tackle plastic straws. This is another council example doing beeswax wraps, corporates, how to reduce plastics in events. We're always looking for stories to share in there. So if you're doing an initiative, we'd love to share that, because then it helps other people. And so we have a writer that helps us to share these stories. What were the steps? What did you do? What were the challenges? What were the barriers? Here's a quick summary, and here's how you could do it too. So that's always really popular. We also have a number of resources. We've got, as we shared before, different posters and also editable versions, as well as versions in half a dozen languages or so, and we're always increasing those on request. And then there's a number of other assets in there, different badges, emails, signatures, social media tiles, etc., that you can use. With social media, again, with Plastic Free July, whilst we're very motivated by the problem, a lot of what we're sharing on social media is the solutions, and not just what we're doing or our participants are doing, but other organisations around the world. So whether that's you're having a plastic-free morning tea, or I was talking this morning to an organisation in the US that is doing a plastic take back activation on the 23rd of July with a number of organisations. I was also talking to a woman in Canada who's adapted our poster and putting that up in businesses in her town in British Columbia. So I've said, great, will you take some photos of that? Will you tag us? Will you share it? Will you, so we can inspire other people to do that too. Just going back on that homepage, obviously we want people to take the challenge and to sign up. And when people are signing up to the challenge, we're not holding anyone to anything. And we always say it's not about being perfect, it's about just doing what you can. But when people formally take part in our research, the pesky plastics quiz, we do our surveys before and after, so we can track behaviour change. And we ask people to do this every year, whether you've participated before or not. So we're actually knowing what are people's consumer choices and behaviours and their attitudes before they do Plastic-Free July, and then again in September. And then in September, we also run this as a general population survey, so we can track what our participants are doing versus the general public. So we have really good insights into the behaviours that people are doing, what is already habits by the majority of people, and then that helps inform us as to, well, what do we tackle next? What are the issues that people are struggling with, and how can we help them? So we'll also pop that link for the Pesky Plastics quiz tool. Again, that piece of work and research is done by our behavioural economist, and it's hosted by an independent research company. So we're very hands-off with all of that work. And finally, the other thing that I just wanted to share with you, and again, we'll pop all of this in the link and in the Changemaker toolbox, is what we're doing for Plastic-Free July this year. So we're just, and this is, we'll be finalising all of this in the coming week, is we've created a calendar, so 31 days of plastic-free choices to give people ideas of what they can do throughout July to be part of it. And then every day in July, we'll be sharing one of those choices. And again, this one's a work in progress, but we will be dropping into that toolbox social media tiles to share, so that other organisations can share, or also just participants can share. This is what I'm doing. I'm part of this Turning the Tide, one choice at a time. And then the final, the final thing that I just wanted to share with you that we're doing is going to be focusing on the coffee cups. And so the reason, there's a number of reasons that we're focusing on the coffee cup in particular this year. The main reason being that that we've heard from a lot of communities and a lot of people that there's been a setback with COVID, with some cafes not allowing it, some cafes switching just to takeaway, so to single-use cup only for takeaway coffees. And we feel like this is a good opportunity with in many places, people returning to their to working back in the office for the first time, as a bit of a reset, as a prompt to remind behaviours. I think there's also a bit of confusion out there about, is it allowed or not? So we're working with WWF, who'll be producing a policy paper which has got health guidance from different jurisdictions on the safe use of reusables. And what we will be doing is really focusing, again, rather than the problem necessarily, more on what are the solutions that people can do, and acknowledging they'll be different in different locations. There's been some research published in Australia at the end of last year to show that the single-use coffee cup lined with plastic and the plastic lid is now our #1 single-use plastic item used in this country each year. The number is a staggering 1.84 billion. The latest research that I've been able to find from the US is 50 billion per year. If you know any other stats in where you live, we'd love to hear those, because this will, like all our work, will truly be a global campaign. We've done some research recently trying to understand people's behaviours a bit more. We know in the research that we did, which was just within Western Australia, that 84% of adults buy takeaway coffee, coffee from cafes, and of those, the majority of people are at least on some occasions buying it for takeaway rather than dining in. And staggeringly, 100% of people who buy takeaway coffees own a reusable cup. So although there's only a small percentage of people who always bring the reusable cup, 100% of people buy them. So it's those kinds of insights. We also have insights that the 18 to 34-year-old demographic are the people most likely to forget to bring their own cup when they're buying a takeaway coffee. People working in the city, people working full time, and people on higher incomes are the people also most likely to forget. So we're getting a really good insight as we finalise this campaign into who our target audience are. This is just a draft of the collateral, and we're still just finalising the name. We're going to be focusing on the cups in the last week of July so we can build up momentum during Plastic-Free July, and the activation to choose better than single use, whatever we decide to call that, will be on the 25th to the 31st of July. So our concept is around focusing, and again, we'll have tools and resources. We'll have some posters, some short how-to videos, some photos and resources for cafes, some comms aimed at the general public, creating new social norms and fostering behaviour change, as well as supporting organisations to engage their workforce. So we're going to be focusing on the actual behaviours of bringing your own cup, borrowing a cup from a cup exchange scheme, or encouraging and supporting cafes to set up a mug library, which obviously won't be on offer in every cafe, excuse me, or staying and dining in. So these are the options there that we're looking at for this campaign, and just different ways to excuse me, promote those different behaviours. So that will be the Bring, Borrow, Stay campaign. Will be in that last week of July. So I'm just going to stop sharing there. Would love if just at the moment, I'm just going to grab a quick glass of water. Got the post-COVID cough at the moment, and just love people, if you could just wouldn't mind while I just change the settings so people can talk. Okay, I've got some in there. Thanks, Jessie. If you could just pop in the chat the some more details of like what the issue is that you're working on or trying to address in your area. If you've got any plans for Plastic-Free July 2022, and then I'm just going to switch the settings and just open it up to questions. So if you don't mind just popping that in the chat, I'm just going to mute myself for one moment and do that.